Hi, and welcome back to my channel, where in the third part of this Ranger series, I will be showing you how to level a Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition Ranger class character within Fantasy Grounds. I hope to complete as many levels as possible, but I may have to split this particular video into 2 or more parts depending on how long each particular portion takes. As this is a base class, sometimes going through the explanations of the various features that each character is going to be able to make use of could take a little bit longer than I intend. So, that could end up breaking our video into multiple parts. I will do my best to try to finish it as quickly as possible, though. Now, as I've already gone through and described what the Ranger character is, set up the level 1 Ranger character in our previous videos, I'm now going to look at what happens when we start looking at level 2 and higher for this particular character. So let's begin. At level 2, we will be gaining a couple of features, specifically fighting style and our spellcasting capability. So let's go ahead and drop this into place. And I'm just going to take this icon and drop it right over top of our class section here for our level. I am then going to pop open the fighting style option here, as well as our spellcasting features. And then I'll go over each of these. So the first feature, which is a fighting style feature, gives you multiple choices when it comes to the various types of quote-unquote stances your character is going to take, if you will, and give you a bit of a bonus depending on the type of stance. So for example, with archery, you will gain a +2 bonus to your attack rolls. So if you decided to choose archery, you would have to make a modification to your attack roll here in order to give it the +2 bonus. And you simply do that by modifying the actual attack roll for your weapon and by clicking on this particular icon here and adding a +2 to here. So if I put a 2 here, for example, we now have a +8. I won't be choosing that for this particular character. I have something special in mind. In relation to the defense aspect of it, while you are wearing armor, you will now gain a +1 bonus to AC. Well, to put this into place, you would go back to your main tab, modify your armor class itself, which is in this row here, by clicking on this magnifying glass icon here, and adding in a miscellaneous bonus of +1, which would increase your armor class. And again, I'm not going to be choosing that particular option. In relation to dueling, when you are wielding a melee weapon in one hand and no other weapons, you gain a +2 bonus to your damage rolls with that particular weapon. Well, what that would mean is that, let's say we didn't have this particular short sword, we only had this one sword active at any given moment. Well, you'd be adding an additional +2 bonus to your damage here. So you would modify that by clicking on this particular icon here and giving it a 2 to increase the damage. And as you can see, it now does +6 points of damage as opposed to the +4 that was there. And then this last one, which is 2-weapon fighting style, will allow you to be able to wield 2 weapons and actually add the damage modifier bonus to the second attack. So if you look here, we're only doing 1d6 of piercing damage with this second-handed offhanded weapon. We can modify that by actually altering the weapon metadata itself by clicking this uppermost magnifying glass that's in the weapon header bar. When you do that, there's a little toggle button here called 2-weapon fighting style. When you click that, you will see that the +4 bonus now reappears, and this is actually the fighting style I'm going to be choosing for this particular character. Now, essentially both of my attacks are doing equal damage regardless of which sword I decide to attack with. But I want to be able to remind myself that I have chosen 2-weapon fighting style. And you do that by simply adjusting the title, if you will, of the fighting style and adding 2-weapon to the category here. And now I know exactly which fighting style I have selected. With the spellcasting feature, your character is now gaining the ability to actually cast specific types of spells, and these are ranger spells. And there's a limited listing of spells specific to it, as well as a limited number of levels that you can actually choose. Much like a cleric, however, a ranger has the ability to know a specific number of spells for each level. So, for example, at level 2, we know 2 spells. That means that we can prepare 2 spells. But we also have access to 2 spell slots. Well, you'll notice that on our Actions tab here, we only have 0 spell slots. That's because when the character wizard creates a character sheet that doesn't have spellcasting capabilities right off, it does not actually go through the process of setting this up. You have to set that up yourself. And you do that by going to the preparation selection here and then setting up your spell slots for your initial number of spell slots that you're gaining. In theory, going forward now, we should be able to automatically calculate how many spell slots we're going to gain at each level as we level this character up through the Fantasy Grounds rule system. Unlike wizards and mages, rangers do not have the ability to take a scroll and translate that scroll into a particular spell book because rangers don't actually really carry around a spell book. The way a ranger acquires their spells is through prayer at the time that they have leveled their character up. And what this means is that unlike other classes such as a cleric or druid, you don't get the ability to swap out spells when you execute a rest. The only time that a ranger gets to actually swap out a spell is when they level up. So, for example, at level 2, let's say I chose Cure Wounds and one of the other spells. If I didn't like that other spell, I would have to wait until level 3 before I could change it out. Rangers do gain their spellcasting abilities through whatever deity they have chosen to actually worship. But unlike clerics and druids, that deity is only going to be able to provide some level of attention to you to be able to grant you spells at the time of leveling. This is how this works. So let's go ahead and set up a couple of spells. Well, on our class sheet down at the bottom is going to be the link that gives you access to the feature. You can also gain access to that through your actual abilities tab here once you've unlocked level 2. In the middle of your Rangers class sheet, you will see a table that explains how many spells you know and how many spell slots you have of each particular level up to 5th level spells. Your spell level known, you'll see here, generally grows by 2 levels, and you get 1 spell per level. In fact, I don't think there's any exception to that particular rule from the looks of it. So you're starting off with 2, and by the time you hit level 20, you'll have 11 spells that you will be able to cast. That essentially means that you will have 11 spells that you will be able to prepare in total. And you will also notice that your wisdom bonus is not coming into play here. You don't gain additional spells simply because you happen to have a high wisdom. That's not how the ranger works. So I'm going to pop open this particular table here, and I'm going to choose my first level spells. So I always like to add Cure Wounds and Hunter's Mark. And I will stick with those 2 spells for now. And the last thing that I want to cover about the spellcasting ability here is that your spell modifier, or your spellcasting ability, if you will, is going to be your wisdom modifier. So all of your spells will have to be able to get set up so that your character's wisdom modifier activates and changes things. So you will see here that there's a +3 on this particular heal spell. Well, the advantage we have is it's already set up for us. We don't need to worry about that. And all of the other spells should already have that taken into account. This is one of the good things about Fantasy Grounds. It already knows that Wisdom is a ranger's spellcasting capability. So it's already taken into account our modifier when it comes to this particular healing spell, the Cure Wounds one. Any other spell that has a saving throw specific to our Wisdom, so in other words, our Wisdom is dictating our adversary's saving throw, minimum value that they have to actually roll in order to pass it, that kind of thing, it's already set up to go. We don't have to adjust anything. Unlike other previous videos where we've had to go through and make some minor adjustments, for example, the Bard, that's because of special case spells that the Bard was able to make use of. In the case of the Ranger, it is crisp and clear as to what its spellcasting capability is, as well as the spells being set up to already take advantage of that particular configuration. So there's nothing we need to move or do. We just need to remember that that's what it is. At level 3, we're going to be gaining our Ranger archetype. So this is where we get to choose our class specialization. We are also gaining a new feature called Primeval Awareness, as well as an additional first level spell slot and an additional known spell. So let's go ahead and drop this into place. And drop that there. And for this particular example, I'm simply going to choose the Hunter specialization here, but I will not be covering any of the features we gain through the Hunter. That's going to be done in a video specific to the Hunter class specialization. I'm then going to pop open our Primeval Awareness feature and set that aside. And then simply go through and actually set up our spells. So I do need access to our spellcasting table. Just going to open that up, leave that down here at the bottom, because we will be periodically adding additional spells. And then I'm going to drop Hail of Thorns into place to do a little bit of damage, and because it happens to have a saving throw here. Now this is actually incorrect. That's because our saving throw bonus is only coming into play, plus our proficiency bonus is coming into play. There should be a slightly higher value for this particular saving throw. Well, there's a couple of ways you can go about fixing this. You can just simply pop this open, and it will automatically fix it. Or you close and open this, and it should automatically fix it. In this particular case, it looks like it's actually calculating it properly. So let's just confirm that. If I go through and I set up the group, if you will, for spells, it's already set up as the Wisdom ability modifier here, which means that this is already configured. If I set this to anything other than Wisdom, it's going to adjust everything. So I guess it has, in fact, calculated this saving throw properly. We don't need to worry about it. Excellent. That takes care of our spells. So let's take a look at Primeval Awareness. So the Primeval Awareness feature is a very interesting feature because it gives you the ability to sense a specific type of creature within a specific distance from you, depending on the terrain that you happen to be in. You make use of a spell slot. So even though you're not casting a spell, you're still expending that particular spell slot for this feature to actually work. And with that, you were able to focus for a 1 minute period, 2 minute period, 3 minute period, all the way through to 5 minute period, depending on which spell level slot that you gave up. So 5th level would give you 5 minutes, 1st level will give you 60 seconds. You then can sense roughly what types of creatures are within that area of space around you. So 1 mile in the case of any terrain that isn't your favorite terrain, and 6 miles if you happen to be within your favorite terrain. And you can get a type of creature off of this particular list. So you can sense whether there's aberrations, celestials, dragons, elementals, fae, fiends, and undead. But you're not going to get their direction, and you're not going to get their number. So for example, if you were to, say, use this feature when you're in the middle of a desert, the DM will respond to you, there's nothing in this particular region, or you sense that there are some aberrations and elementals that happen to be in the area. That's all you're going to get. They're not going to be able to tell you how many, what type of creature, where they're located, or anything like that. This, however, does not need to be set up in your Actions tab for use. You just have to be able to go to your Abilities tab and indicate to the Dungeon Master that you're using it, and that's it. And that actually completes everything we need to do for level 3. At level 4, we are gaining access to no new spell slots and no new spells. We are, however, gaining our first ability score improvement. Let's drop this into place, and then I will explain what the ability score improvement does. So that is up here. And let's just leave that there. With the ability score improvement, you are now gaining the ability to make potentially 3 changes to your character, but you only get to choose one of those changes. So essentially you have the option, and it's a guaranteed option, to take one of your ability scores and modify it by 2 points. Or, and this is the second guaranteed option, you get to choose 2 of your ability scores and modify each of them by 1 point. So for example, I could take my strength, which is a 14 right now, and modify that to a 16 if I chose to take the +2 ability score modifier. My other option would be to take my constitution and my intelligence and modify each of those by 1 point. So I could take my constitution to a 16 and my intelligence to a 14. That is the second guaranteed option. The third potential change that you could make to your character is an optional rule. So not all dungeon masters are going to allow this to happen, but that is to be able to take a feat. And feats are additional features, if you will, they're just called feats for some reason, that you can actually take in lieu of an ability score improvement and give your character that particular capability. So for instance, I could decide to choose Medium Armor Master as a feat, and it would go under the Abilities tab here, up here, and then I would gain the benefits of what Medium Armor Master actually gave me. I'm not going to be doing that in this particular ability score improvement. I'm going to be modifying my dexterity by 2 points just to show you what happens when you make that change. So my armor class is improved, obviously, because my dexterity has increased. My dexterity saving throw has improved because I now have an additional point in my modifier. Any skill that relies on my dexterity has improved. And my attack and damage bonuses have also improved because I've had an increase in my ability score. And that is everything that you would have to worry about when you're making the change. Everything else is automatic for you. And for Ranger, that is everything we need to deal with at level 4. At level 5, we are now gaining an extra attack capability. We are also seeing an increase in our proficiency bonus, and we are unlocking our first 2 second level spell slots, gaining an additional spell slot, but only gaining 1 additional known spell. Okay, so that's going to be a bit tricky. You now have to make a decision as to whether you choose a level 1 spell or a level 2 spell. Okay, so let's drop this into place, and then I will pop open the extra attack feature. So there's something I intentionally waited until we got to this particular point so that I can help clarify a few things. First off, with the extra attack feature, you are now gaining the ability to execute an attack action twice within a single round. So a normal round consists of a movement round, an action, a bonus action, and if available and or required, a reaction. Those are generally the things that you can do. There's an unspoken one, which is called a free action, and that's just generally when you're speaking in a particular combat situation up to a certain number of words. But that doesn't relate to what I'm going to discuss here. With the extra attack action, because this particular character has 2 weapons that they're wielding, before they even acquired the extra attack capability, they can already attack twice. And the reason why is because the attack action allows you to make your melee weapon attack. But because you have a weapon in your offhand, you had the ability to do something called an offhand attack, which is a bonus action. So you could make your movement, you could make your primary weapon attack. So let's say you're right-handed and you used your right-hand sword for that. You can make your offhand attack as a bonus action, which is your left-hand weapon. and then you can do a reaction. That's essentially how that works. When the extra attack capability comes into play, you are now gaining the ability to attack a total of 3 times. You're gaining the ability to attack twice with either hand as your attack action, and you are still gaining the ability to make use of your offhand attack. So let's say, for example, you're battling a particular baboon. You can make 2 swings with your primary weapon and then make a 3rd swing with your offhand weapon as a bonus action. The first 2 swings would be classified as your attack action. That's how that works. However, when you make your attack with your bonus attack, you are not able to attack twice. You are using your offhand weapon to make the attack. Therefore, you are able to sneak in an extra attack with that offhand weapon. That's why it's a bonus action, not a primary attack. That's the reason why you only get 3 attacks. You're not getting 4, you're getting 3. You cannot, however, mix in a primary attack if you're casting a spell. So if you, say, cast Hail of Thorns here, for example, you don't get to cast the Hail of Thorns and then make a primary attack. However, it could potentially be argued that as a ranger, you could cast a spell as your primary action, but still make your offhand attack as a bonus action. That could potentially be available. I will have to clarify that in the rules. I actually have not had anybody do that, so I don't know. There is one other rule that you have to take into account, and that is your reaction. Attacks of opportunity, for example, are a reaction, and you might gain additional capabilities and features that give you additional reaction options. But generally, most times, a reaction is going to be one of 2 things. It's going to be an attack of opportunity, or it's going to be when a readied action actually activates. So with older editions, you used to be able to defer your overall grouping of actions until later in the turnaround. Generally, that doesn't happen so much anymore. Essentially, what you do is you set up a ready action. And the ready action allows you to actually go through and say, I will attack this orc if it comes within 5 feet of me. Well, if that orc never comes in within 5 feet of you, you don't get an action. That's an attack action. You don't get to use your reaction for that particular purpose, and you can't use a reaction that works as an attack of opportunity because your reaction is already quote-unquote booked to act as that ready action. That's what that works, and that's how that works. When it comes to 2 weapons, you do not get to make 2 attacks during an attack of opportunity. You potentially could argue that you could do it as a reaction to a readied action because you're waiting, you're anticipating it. An attack of opportunity is you sneaking in an extra attack when the target in question is leaving your sphere of influence. So there are a wide-ranging number of rules there that need to be taken into account when you're wielding 2 weapons. And you got to be very cognizant of what ones actually apply. So in the case of a ranger, dual wielding 2 short swords, which is what's happening in this particular case, I can attack with my primary weapon twice, and then I can attack with my offhand weapon once, or I can attack with my primary weapon once, then attack with my offhand weapon once, that's my extra attack, and then I can attack with my offhand weapon again as my secondary bonus action. So that's how that could work. How does it work in relation to the longbow? Well, with the longbow, you're able to attack twice. But if you're holding your longbow, you're not wielding your short swords. You're not wielding the ability to necessarily cast a spell because you have to let go of your longbow to be able to hold the focus to be able to cast the spell. With your longbow, the way that extra attack works is you get to shoot 2 arrows. You don't have to do it at the same target. It's generally done, but you don't have to. You do get the ability to make 2 attacks. You do not, however, get the ability to make 2 attacks with your extra attack feature for your longbow. Drop your longbow, pick up your short sword, and swing your offhand weapon on that. That's not how that works. That would transition to the next round for any melee combat that was going to come into play. That is how the extra attack action works in relation to the ranger. Now, I did not actually go through and select our spells, so let's go ahead and do that. So, as we can see, once we initiated the spell slot setting, if you will, it's keeping in line with our actual number of spell slots. We don't need to worry about modifying it going forward. What we do need to do is select a second level spell. And I'm going to take Pass Without a Trace because I love that spell. And with this, we have now completed everything that we have to do for level 5. At level 6, we are simply gaining Favored Enemy and Natural Explorer improvements, and we are not gaining anything else. So let's go ahead and drop level 6 into place, and then make our adjustments to our Favored Enemy. Now you'll see that a secondary Favored Enemy thing has dropped into place here. I'm not sure if that's a bug or not, but it is now there. This gives us the ability to choose an additional category of enemy that we want to say is our quote-unquote favorite enemy. By the time you're level 6, chances are you've run into some undead. So I'm going to set undead as my next favorite enemy. And that should be a space between there. There we go. It's interesting to note, though, that our Natural Explorer feature did not double up like favorite enemy did. So let's pop this one open, and we do gain a new featured here. So I'm going to say, let's go with mountain for our second. So that's down here, and I'm going to type in mountain. So now I have 2 favored terrains. And that's all we have to do for level 6. At level 7, we are acquiring our second Ranger archetype feature, which I'm not going to be covering in this particular video. And we are gaining an additional spell slot for level 3, as well as an additional known spell. Sorry, level 2, I mean, for our spell slot. So let's drop this into place. And let's select an additional level 2 spell. Let's see here. I'll go with Spike Growth, because that can do some damage. And that's everything we have to do for level 7. At level 8, we are gaining our next 2 features. The first is the ability score improvement, which we also had gained at level 4, and a new feature called Land's Stride. So let's drop this into place and take a look. And Land's Stride, there we go. Let's set that up there. The first thing I'm going to cover is the ability score improvement. And in this particular case, I'm going to be taking 2 ability scores and increasing each of them by 1 so that you can see how that works. And I want you to keep an eye on this particular number here. I may have a changing value here, and I'm pretty certain that it will. Yes. So that's a 14. What this now means is that our character, because we've had an increase in our Constitution modifier, is now missing hit points. It is missing 8 of them, to be specific. And the reason it's missing 8 of them is because we had a single point increase multiplied by our level gives us 8. So it's a +1 times 8 is 8. That means that I now have 76 hit points as opposed to 68. That's how you can... Why is that a -20? Oops. Not sure where that came from. But anyway... I wonder if it's because I'm using the negative symbol as my stopping and starting of recording, but I'm digressing. Anyway, because of the ability score improvement, we have now gotten an increase in our hit points, completing what we need to do for that. So let's take a look at Land Stride. With the Land's Stride feature, you are now gaining the ability to travel through difficult terrain that is non-magical with no extra movement penalty. So if you have a movement rate of 35, you'll be able to move all 35 movement points through difficult terrain. If that terrain happens to be plants that have thorny spines or spiky hazards that happen to be attached to them, you no longer take damage from them, I should say. Finally, if you are entangled or have any other form of spell that creates a plant-based impediment for you, you gain advantage on saving throws associated with that particular spell. The entanglement spell is a perfect example of that. Unfortunately, this feature does not have an easy effect setting, if you will, when it comes to actually going through and determining an incoming spell type, if you will. So there's nothing we actually have to set up in our Actions tab. I am going to do this just for the purposes of completion, though, and drop this into place and set this under Ranger, but you'll see that there is no effect here. Where is it here? There it is. There is no effect here. All I'm doing is putting that there so that I can indicate to the Dungeon Master that I'm using Land's Stride to gain advantage on my saving throw for the Entangle spell that just got flung at me. I add in the advantage saving throw, and then I make, I believe it's a dexterity check, or dexterity saving throw rather, and I gain advantage during that particular process. So I would have succeeded. And that's all that is. That's all you have to do in order to make use of Land's Stride. At level 9, we are not gaining any additional features. We are seeing an increase in our proficiency bonuses. And we are seeing an increase in our known spells, as well as access to 3rd level spell slots. Let's drop this into place. And let's take a quick look at a spell that we can put into place here. I'm going to go with Lightning Arrow. A little bit of damage. Nice bit of damage, actually. And that takes care of everything that we have to do at level 9. At level 10, we are gaining an improvement to our Natural Explorer feature, as well as a new feature called Hide in Plain Sight. We are not gaining anything else, so let's drop this into place. And our Natural Explorer improvement means that we get to select an additional terrain type, and Hide in Plain Sight is our next feature. So I am going to add Coast to the type here. So maybe by this time we have headed out towards Waterdeep and are traveling between Waterdeep and Neverwinter along the coastline. And that takes care of everything that we have to do for Natural Explorer. So let's prepare to take a look at Hide in Plain Sight. With the Hide in Plain Sight feature, you can spend up to 1 minute preparing a specific type of camouflage, and you must have access to either fresh mud, dirt, plants, soot, or other naturally occurring materials with which to be able to create that camouflage. Think a ghillie suit, for example. When you are wearing that camouflage, you can press yourself up against a solid surface and attempt to hide there. You will gain a +10 bonus to your stealth saving throw, or stealth check, as long as you remain there without moving or taking any actions. If you move or take an action, you have to re-camouflage yourself, so spending another 60 seconds setting up that camouflage before you can attempt to hide again. This is definitely something that we will most likely want to add to our Actions tab. And in that process, I'm going to set up an effect here so that when we gain or roll the saving throw, so Hide in Plain Sight, semicolon, I believe it is SAV:10. And when you execute a dexterity or stealth-based saving throw, actually this wouldn't be a saving throw, this would be a check. Now that I think about it. When you execute this check, it should add these 10 points to that particular roll. So let's go ahead and add the effect to ourselves. So it's now ready to go. If I make the stealth check, we should see a plus 19 total, which we do, for a total of 31, despite the fact that we rolled a 12. That is how that particular feature works. Now, in theory, that should have gone away. So it did not, which means we need to set up the portion of this that makes it expire on the next roll. Now, if we add the effect to ourselves and make that same skill check roll, it has gone away. Excellent. So that is now working the way that we want it to. And that's how you set up hide in plain sight and how you use it. Unfortunately, due to the fact that I'm attempting to keep these videos within the 30-minute time frame, I'm pretty certain I'm over that particular point in this particular video. So I'm going to save levels 11 through 20 for the next video in this particular series. But with this, we have managed to get through levels 2 through 8, as well as address all of the features that you're gaining for those particular levels and show how they are actually set up as well as used. So with that, I hope you found this particular video useful and informative, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video. I wish to thank you for taking the time to watch this particular video. I hope you found it informative and useful to familiarizing yourself with Fantasy Grounds in general, and that you had fun in the process. If you found the video useful and you liked the content of the particular video, go ahead and click that like button to let me know. And if you have any questions specific to the topic covered by this particular video, or just have some comments in general, please feel free to post something in the comments section, and I will do my best to respond to any questions that are asked. Additionally, I do release content quite regularly, and it's generally specific to Fantasy Grounds or 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons at this time. So if you'd like to be notified when new videos come out, go ahead and subscribe and click the notification bell to ensure that notification is sent to you when I release a new video.